Okay, welcome everyone to our work session today. We have two items on the agenda, one on bell schedule recommendations and another for the 2023-24 instructional calendar. So we will start with bell schedule recommendations for next year's school year in accordance with policy 3300. And with us is Mark Strickland and Bob Sneidmiller. Superintendent Moore, do you have anything to kick us off?
No, but I don't think there's a lot of changes here. Just as a reminder to the board, we are required to adopt bell schedules for the upcoming school year by April 1st. Is it April 1st? April 1st. So we're bringing this to you now in preparation for bringing those eventually to the board for approval.
All right. Thank you.
So good afternoon, Chair Mahaffey, board members, and Superintendent Moore. As Superintendent Moore just said, that in accordance with Board Policy 3300, staff is to bring bell schedule recommendations to you by April 1 for the subsequent year. And she also mentioned that they're pretty straightforward this year. So with that, staff recommends no changes to existing bell schedules for the 22-23 school year. We will add 3 new schools and a new early college campus, and we will align those. We recommend to align those bell schedules with the standard bell schedules based on the tier that they are on. The 3 new schools, Apex Friendship Elementary School and Barton Pond Elementary School, we recommend a 9:15 to 3:45 bell schedule. Herbert Akins Road Middle School, we recommend a second tier 8:15 to 3 o'clock bell schedule. And for the Wake Early College in Morrisville, that new campus, we recommend a 7:25 to 2:30 bell schedule. And those are recommendations for the 22-23 school year. And with that, based on approval, we would bring this forward to you at your March 15th meeting for consideration.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sneidmiller. Are there any comments or questions from board members regarding this? Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, and thank you, Mr. Sneidmiller. As you said, there are no changes, but about a year ago, I thought we were discussing, beginning our discussions as a board about moving our high schools to a later start time, recognizing the difficulty that puts on so many of our high school students to be up so early. And so I wanted to have to ask that question, why we haven't, but I understand that we've been in a pandemic, but I think that's one thing that also came out of the pandemic is students appreciated being able to sleep in and respond to their biorhythm. So I'm going to let Mr. Strickland answer that.
So I had heard that there had been some discussion before COVID came last time, and in fact, very recently had a discussion with academics about this very issue. So it's not so much a transportation concern, because we could easily flip the elementary and the high schools. That's not the issue. I think the issue is many other things that would affect district personnel and families. And so in talking with academics, we'd like to really prepare. There was a hiatus with COVID, but we need to get back on it. So what we'd like to do is kind of get academics into the mix, talk about all of the things that would affect this decision, because there are many things that affect this decision, not just the fact that the older kids might do well sleeping in. There also could be effects, both good and bad, for academics, for kids that work after school, lots of things. And so we'd really like to get a runway set where we can look at all of the things that would go into that decision and even benchmark other districts that have implemented this. There are some in the state that have done it. And so we'd like to do that and put together a thorough plan and bring it back to you.
Thank you, sir. Because yes, Guilford and Durham, I know have and they should have enough experience that they maybe can give us some feedback. And I fully understand this affects our elementary school populations, and a lot of both our bell schedules and our school calendars affect our families and our students on a daily impactful way. It structures their day. So absolutely, we need to make sure we're communicating and getting feedback on these issues. So I had to ask that question, though, so that we can get that
I'll just add a
discussion started.
couple of
Thank you.
additional pieces to it. In addition to working with academics, I think there's space for engaging some of our principals in the pros and cons and our community members in some of the pros and cons. And so, as I think about this moving forward, presentation to the board is one thing, but there may be a need to push something out to BACs or something along those lines, or the general public. But we've had those conversations and know that we need to get that to you.
Thank you.
And I think athletics is another piece that comes up as well in that. Is there a thought as to when we might see this again in that context?
So, not in the next few months. It would take some time to really get the data and take a look at it. As I said, I talked to academics very recently, and they are aware that this request would be coming up. So, I think we can certainly get something by summertime, enough time for us to think through what the options might would be, and plenty of time to implement it for the next school year if you chose to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Ms. Cash.
Well, and thanks for bringing that up, Ms. Kushner. And we had some really good work sessions and breakouts, and there should be a lot of good notes from that, because I think we broke it down into options and we broke it down to things that we all agreed on. So hopefully you can find that dialogue and the notes that we had from that session. I mean, you were here, Bob, and I think Mr. Gardner was leading that. David was leading it. Okay. So, we did a lot of work over a period of a long work session, so hopefully we can get those notes from that.
Thank you for that reminder, Ms. Cash. Ms. Carter, and then Vice Chair Hagerty.
Just really quick, and I do agree with that. However, like the community, I would like more of a timeline for when we could hear directly from the community, and also how we could even make some of our athletic programs still exist if we go that late, and how a lot of our students not only work outside of school, we have childcare issues, we have athletic issues for those who also are on athletic teams outside of our school, and that could impact. There's just so many. And so I know we had talked about before contacting businesses and local partners and doing all that. So I think that and having a time frame for that and really getting that up and running too is very important as soon as we can. Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Hagerty.
Thank you. So I'm not going to vote for the bell schedule, and I'm going to tell you why. And then if there's anything we can do to correct that, I might change my vote.
Well, there's no vote yet.
I know.
Okay.
I'm announcing it now in work session so that by the time this comes to a vote, it could be changed. But if it doesn't change, then I'm not voting for it. That's what I'm saying. Okay. And specifically, the reason I'm not voting for it goes back to student assignment and the public hearings that we had and the opening of the new school. So I have no problem with the existing bell schedule as you have it. But with the new bell schedule for the opening of Barton Pond Elementary, we have set the proposed start time at 9:15 a.m. As we heard from parents in public hearings, both virtual and in person, there are issues where they have a child who might be trying to finish at a school who is eligible to grandfather, but a younger child also attending the school who would not be able to, under the stability rules, stay in that school. And so parents were asked to make a hard choice. Do they take their kid, do they take their older kid who could stay and finish at a school out of that school and put them in a new school for their final year? Or do they take the younger children and keep them at a school a year longer, even though they're going to be at the new eventual school? And a lot of parents had to go and make that choice and make that selection of what they wanted to do. And it was talked about, how can they possibly have two children in two different places in the morning at the same time? And the idea was talked about that we could look at the proposed start times and see if there was some sort of stagger or examination of the tier. Because if you look specifically at the schools that have been reassigned to Barton Pond, York Elementary, for example, York Elementary and Barton Pond Elementary are in completely opposite directions of the areas that were moved under reassignment. So you would have parents having to go in both north and south to get to the same place at the same time. Similarly with the area that's in Jeffries Grove. Leesville Road, there you're not going so much north-south as you're going east-west. So I understand the tier system, and I understand the efficiencies that we have to accommodate. It is high calculus getting all of these buses to the right places on the right time, on the right schedule. And I fully understand that challenge. But for 1 year, temporarily, while this grandfathering is going on, now that we've already had parents lock in their choices before knowing the bell schedule, I don't think we can ask them to be in the same place at the same time. So we have students reassigned to this new school. Some are coming from schools that have an 8:30 start time. Some are coming from schools that have a 9:15 start time. If there is some way that a 9 a.m. start time or an 8:45 start time or some other accommodation could be made to help those parents who've already locked in their grandfathering choices into Barton Pond, if there's some way that time can be amended, again, it would only be for 1 year, need to be for 1 year, because the grandfathering under the stability rule would only be for the 1 year, and for the siblings, the younger siblings, then I could support it. But as it is, I can't support it under those circumstances. Thank you.
Ms. Cash.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a couple questions, but you don't have to defend yourself because I'm not arguing against you on this. But just to be clear, so we are offering the 4th and 5th grade at the new school. And so, are we? Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, so, I mean, some kids could go in as new students and not grandfather. I'm not saying that would be a happy situation because I know how people get attached to their school. And my other question is that I'm going to assume that.
Ms. Cash, the other issue was sometimes the parents do like to drive them, but then other times children that young, there's a lot of hesitancy to leave them at a bus stop, unmonitored or alone.
Yeah,
so
I would
even
agree.
if they use the bus, there's still the coordination between which students you leave
Right.
where, because the buses don't always arrive at the same place at the same time.
And I
either.
agree with that, and I didn't know if that was something they could look at too, as if the bus stops were earlier for one school that the child could be left off and then they could go to the grandfathered school. And I know we don't provide the transportation to the grandfathered school, so that is a dilemma. I just wanted to ask those questions so I understood. I'm not, contradicting what you're saying at all, though, but I get it.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Cash.
Do we know how many students have that how many families have that dual school issue?
I don't. I know it has been raised to me by, again, it's a handful of parents. I don't know how representative that is of the total number, but I do know that they made their decisions based on thinking that it would not be the same start time, or influenced by that. I can't say that that was the only.
Yeah, I think it'd be
only
helpful
factor.
to know the number of families involved.
Mr. Haggerty, and to your recollection, we committed to staggering those start times?
I cannot say that anyone ever committed because
Okay.
there was no one from transportation at those meetings. I can say that it was presented that that's something we could explore.
Okay.
And so it wasn't a commitment, but when you throw something out there as an option, as a potential solution,
Okay, I
you know,
appreciate it. Thank you.
You understand. Thank you.
All right. So are there any other comments, questions? All right, we heard from Mr. Haggerty about looking into maybe some temporary adjustments for Barton Pond to accommodate families, and reaching out to student assignment to find out how many families are keeping a student at their school that they were previously assigned to, rather than attending their new base school of Barton Pond, before we bring this to a vote on the 15th. All right, anything else? Thank you both very much, and we are looking forward to hearing the answers to those questions, then hearing more about bell schedule changes coming in the future. Thank you. Next up, we are talking about calendars for the 2023-2024 school year. And with us, we have Mr. Carrozza and Ms. Anderson-Powell.
While they're sitting down, I'd just like to say, this is actually the normal timeline for adopting calendars. We've been pretty late and made changes pretty late, and we might still have to make changes to the 22-23 calendar even, but this is the normal, the more normal timeline. So again, this is how far out we usually go.
Yay. Thanks.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay. So thank you for having me this afternoon, and Mr. Carrozza for joining me. We are going to start, as usual, kind of with the easier calendars first. So
So who's controlling the presentation?
I am. We're just waiting for control from.
Okay. All right. So Glenn needs control. He needs the ball. Thank you.
you got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the 2023-24 draft instructional calendar is the PowerPoint, and then there's a link in there that'll take you to a Google Doc for all of the calendars.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Is everybody able to access? Okay. So we'll start with the draft 23-24 multi-track year-round calendar. And the one that's in the slide deck is really tiny, so I assume you will want to access the one that's in the Google Drive.
The presentation?
As with all of our calendars, there are 177 student days, 17 teacher work days, 11 holidays, and 10 vacation days, which makes up 215 days of employment for 10-month teachers. That will be the same on all calendars. On the multi-track year-round calendar that I'm presenting today, there are 4 school-wide teacher work days, of which one of them is a district-wide teacher work day on October 23rd. Ooh, I'm so sorry. That means that was time's up. That means go get your child. So there's October 23rd, which is a district-wide teacher workday. So you'll see October 23rd on all 3 of the draft calendars that I'm presenting today. Early colleges typically do their calendars 1 year out. So in the next month or so, I'll be bringing you their calendars. But those will be for 22-23. So you'll see October 23rd on all 3. There are some schools that host only one track or assign all of their children to one track, so you'll see that list of schools there. We did take these calendars to stack, and so you'll see, Glenn, if you'll go one more slide.
Which is the Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council.
Thank you.
One teacher from each school.
And so I presented these calendars to stack, and there were some, questions, recommendations. Some of the things we just can't do because year-round is pretty tight, but one of the things that we looked at was trying to avoid having a split week where there's just one day. We try to avoid that. So we did make a change to a track 3 track out day from May 10th to May 7th, just so those students weren't coming in for one day and then starting again. That's really it for this particular calendar. Do you have any questions? There are always some split weeks, but we try to make them a 2-3 split instead of a 1-4 split. I'm happy for you to ask me any questions, though. Okay, so I'll move on to the next calendar, which is the modified year-round instructional or modified calendar. Again, 177 student days, 17 teacher work days, all to make up 215 days of work for 10-month employees. So you'll see that the modified calendar typically begins the end of July. They go 9 weeks, they have a 2-week break, 9 weeks and have a 2-week break. They do have, on this calendar, a couple of, most of their teacher workdays occur during the track out time for students, but there are a couple that occur when students are tracked in. So you'll see again that October 23rd, which is that district-wide day. February 19th, often they try to take President's Day just because that ends up being like a long time. And then April 10th. So you'll see again the list of schools that are on this calendar. And please note that state law says we can't add any more schools unless they have school calendar flexibility. Are there any questions about this calendar?
Ms. I had a quick question. I thought the April 10th date aligns with the workday on the traditional calendar.
Correct.
I saw. And,
Correct. So, but it doesn't always align all the way across, but when we can, we kind of try to align some
right,
teacher work days.
that's the end of the quarter for
That's
the
the end of quarter for
traditional.
traditional, that's correct.
Thank you.
And you'll notice that the weather makeup days are identified here on the multi-track year-round. I don't identify weather makeup because typically they're on a Saturday if we don't use banked hours. And so then we just have to align them with the tracks that are out. So you won't see identified ones on year-round, but you will see identified ones here. Okay. You will see this calendar also went to stack, and there were no questions. I'm being facetious. There are always questions. One of the questions was about where their teacher workdays fall. A lot of times on year-round, the teacher workdays will be right before the teachers and students are tracking back in. That was a question on this calendar as well, but typically when we have weather makeup where we identify the actual day, then we want it to be continuous at the end of the track out. So we left the teacher workdays at the beginning of the track out so that if we have to use them for weather makeup, the students would just keep going instead of coming back early. I hope that was clear. Okay. So we'll move then to traditional calendar. Okay, so as you know, there is a calendar law that gives us some parameters about our traditional calendar. And so you'll see here that I've put in orange probably two of the biggest things we have to follow when creating a draft traditional calendar. And that is the start date and end date, and then how many days or hours we have to provide for students. So you'll see here that the start date, you can't start any earlier than the Monday closest to August 26th, and you can't end any later than the Friday closest to June 11th.
And we are the only state in the nation that mandates both the beginning and the end of school. Some states mandate the beginning or the end. We're the only one that does both. I understand.
So, and the other is that we have to do 185 days or 1,025 hours. And in Wake County Schools, we do 1,025 hours in 177 student days. So if you go to the next slide, then you'll see just here are kind of our practices. Of course, again, the 177 student days, you will see that the first day for students is August 28th, and the last day for students could be June 14th. Here are the paid holidays that are included on the calendar. They're identified as blue. And then there are 10 annual leave or vacation days. Typically, we put them on winter break, spring break, and the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That's just what we typically do, and you'll see that in this calendar as well. You can go to the next slide. So if we have other opportunities, and some years we do and some years we do not, then we can put a teacher workday on if there's a national election, President's Day, other holidays, other community requests. But that's an if we can, because this is first and foremost an instructional calendar. You will see makeup days can be added to the end of the year, but it cannot make the end of the year longer. So typically, makeup days that aren't covered with banked hours are on a teacher workday. We do try to avoid the teacher workday that's at the end of the quarter, using that as a weather makeup day. We try to avoid that. The committee tries to keep the semesters as equal as possible. We try, if we can, to have some sort of teacher workday each month. And again, not to include the teacher workdays, not to include them all as weather makeup. So, thank you. So you'll see on this calendar, we did choose to put the first day of school as early as we could, which is August 28th. You'll see that each month there's a teacher workday, except the month of May. And the committee really decided they wanted to preserve the month of May for testing. And so you'll see there is one on April 29th, which runs into the first week of May, so it doesn't really look like it's in May, but it's kind of in May. So, but the committee had a lot of conversation about having a teacher workday in May and just how that really impacts testing. So you'll see that there's a teacher workday every other month. The last day for students is June 12th. You'll see that on this calendar, there are 2 teacher workdays at the end of the year. The elementary teachers really they were adamant in their request to have 2 teacher workdays at the end of the year, that it really takes a lot for them to close out the year. This particular year, we were able to provide that. I'm so sorry. Ooh. I'm glad y'all like it. I'm highly embarrassed. I've got it on. Anyway, I'm highly embarrassed by that. So, what else did I want to point out to you? I do want to point out, although it wasn't really planned, but it's working well, that there's a teacher workday after Halloween. And that's because the quarter ends.
Thank you.
It really just worked out that the quarter ended and we could put a teacher workday there. Then I think you'll see the identified workdays at the bottom. This committee decided, as most have decided, to front load the banked days for weather makeup and then identify other days after the use of banked days. This calendar also went to the STAC committee, and we looked at some of their recommendations. The committee reconsidered them but decided to stick with the calendar as it is. There are only 5 teacher workdays at the beginning of the year. Next year's calendar has 8, but that is just being driven by the traditional calendar and the start and end dates. Next year, the calendar has to end by June 11th, and honestly, those 3 days make a huge amount of difference in how flexible you can be on a calendar. Are there any other questions?
Ms. Scott.
I don't have any questions, but as I'm sure everyone at this table will express their gratitude to you and to the members of the committee for providing feedback. But I mean, this is just taking all of the impossible things. It's like someone says, here's the ingredients to make a pie. And then they say, and with the laws and everything else, it adds into really being an impossible task. And I wanted to just express gratitude toward the district-wide teacher workday. As we've been hearing feedback, how valuable one of the positive sides from the pandemic when we were remote was the opportunity for strengthening those the professional learning teams and that those relationships have become more solid. And I think when we had the district-wide teacher workdays before, there was just really unique opportunity for professional development and just being able to share that time together. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for the sensitivity around that, and also for our diverse community that we have in Wake County and sensitivity to trying to provide flexibility around some of those holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. The committee, the traditional calendar committee especially, We met in October for about 3.5 hours to discuss. And the good thing is we have lots of different people on the traditional calendar committee, school-based staff at elementary, middle, and high, administrators, teachers, central staff, community organizers. We have families that are on here. And so we have a really, really rich discussion about the traditional calendar. Especially when there's more flexibility, there's more to discuss. So I'm really pleased that we were able to come to a calendar that I think met the needs of most people most of the time. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Ms. Anderson-Powell, can you remind us when we're going to hear from our early college folks on those calendars?
So I've received a draft from Wake STEM. I've received a draft for all of the 4 that partner with Wake Tech. I just got theirs today. I'm waiting for Wake Young Men's and Wake Young Women's. Those calendars all have to be aligned with their college or university partner. So I'm waiting for Men's and Women's. They partner with St. Augustine's University to get their draft. So as soon as I can get all their drafts, then I'll bring those. So hopefully in the next month.
Well, we look forward to seeing you
Again?
with those again. And please, please share our thanks and gratitude
I will.
to
Thank
the
you.
members of this committee. We know that it's not easy, as Ms. Scott highlighted, and having these calendars years in advance is very helpful for many families and staff members. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your support, too. Thank you. Any other questions?
Anything else?
Okay, then we bring these back the 15th? Is that right?
The 15th, I
We'll bring
believe.
them back on the 15th.
Yes.
If there's any questions, let us know.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. And excuse my alarm. I'm so sorry.
At this time, we have about 45 minutes before our board meeting begins, so I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. If someone would like to bring that up. We're getting there. Maybe it'll be a 15-minute read, who knows?
Some of those reads can kind of been big.
They do get a little long, but that's okay.
Do you have it up already? All right.
All right.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143, 318.11, A1, A3, and A6, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318.11A3, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318.11A3 due to current litigation, AH by GH and AH versus Wake County Board of Education, case number 22-EDC-00007, and to consider confidential student information protected under GS 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S.C. 1232G.
Thank you, Ms. Kushner. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right. Thank you very much. We are now going into closed session.
Adrian. Oh, AJ and. Yeah, I think that's good, because that way we can announce those and Kern can go home. So I'm sending you an email. This is just